Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and welcome to The Last Word. It is a solo show today. My co-hosts are busy, and that's kind of where I actually wanted to start this. So for 2025, we are jumping into many more games coming our way, and Destiny just dropped Act 3, played through some of that yesterday. We'll talk about Elden Ring's Night Ring, signups are coming, what I'm kind of working on playing this month, and kind of what's going on. But to start, I want to talk to you guys about The Last Word podcast itself. First thing, Cognito and Travis are busy. And when it comes to what this podcast used to be about, it was all about Destiny. Typically something to talk about mostly every week. There was some TWID, there was some update going on, kind of what we were up to and playing. There was typically something we managed to talk about for 300 and some odd episodes. We did it for quite a long time. And at this point, if you guys haven't seen or paid attention to either numbers or other things with regards to the channel, Destiny is definitely in a slow point in time. I don't know what Apollo's going to hold. I don't know if Heresy's going to knock it out of the park. None of us are entirely sure. But the biggest thing for all of you is those of you who still enjoy Destiny content, I will still cover when it makes sense for me. Because when it comes to the dungeon in Heresy, that's on the 7th. The opening of Heresy, whatever the new activity is, how the season works, I'll still do occasional things like that for YouTube content. And then what potentially Cognito and Travis and I are working on doing is maybe doing a monthly chat. And the main reason with all of them, I still kind of want to try and do something once a week to catch up with you guys. Even if it's short, I still will probably upload it to the podcast feed so you guys can catch up with me. If there's enough news where I feel like I want to do something more than once a week, you might see more podcast updates coming through me. So Spotify, iTunes, things of that nature. And then if I upload them to the Last Word channel, all of that may kind of accumulate over there. And the main reason for that is going to be, I'm the one who's got the availability. Those two are definitely going to be busier. Travis got a new job. Got it later last year at some point, and he's been kind of working hard on that, and he's still doing reviews and other things. The guy works like 12 hours out of 12 hours and then still tries to find some time to sleep in there. So he's going all the time. And he also does Bitcast on Sunday. If you guys haven't watched Bitcast, it's a great one with Ains and then Hoglaw and then Travis right now. And maybe that'll be something I guessed on later, maybe not, who knows. But he's got a podcast where he covers variety. And what The Last Word started to turn into was a little bit of variety because Destiny didn't always have that much to talk about. Cognito has the same thing, but he actually has it twice. So he has Iron Lord's podcast every Sunday talking about just big news in gaming, their topics that they do, but they cover a lot of things, and it's always a pretty long show. So he's got 3 to 4 hours on Iron Lord's podcast. He also does Defining Duke. Sometimes he's doing Defining Duke Plus, or he's doing any of the other shows that they've got over there on Last Stand Media. And he is doing his double podcast thing. Both of those cover gaming in general. Like most of the, I know Bitcast is gaming. Iron Lord's podcast is typically gaming and sometimes some broader topics and interviews and things like that. They both have a podcast where they talk about variety. And then there's me. When it comes to bringing both of them on the Last Word to talk about what they either are going to talk about later that week or already may have talked about, it does seem a little bit redundant for them. I don't have the same podcast groups that they do, but for me, I still enjoy talking to you guys. I still enjoy streaming. Obviously, I make my content and I'm kind of doing my own thing. So every so often, the goal is to bring the three of us together, catch up maybe once a month when it makes sense, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. If there's a big Destiny drop, then maybe we might talk, a little bit more frequently. And maybe it might be a little less frequently with all three of us. Sorry, I'm getting a little warm here, so I'm trying to unzip the sides of my calves on these little pants here so I can get a little ventilation. But that's kind of where things are looking for. The three of us hanging out, talking to you guys about Destiny. Now, I don't know if you've seen the content on my channel, but I've also been playing less Destiny. I mean, I logged in and... Where are Ebontis? This is Ebontis, right here. Travis and Cognito. Yeah, sorry, Travis. I just got done going through all of that, so if you, back it up about 5-10 minutes. You'll probably hear the full explanation. But basically, they're busy. And when it comes to also their engagement, they're busy, but it's also the fact that I'm trying to not make this podcast redundant for them. And I think that's only fair for them to not have to rehash something that they are either talking about or already are going to talk about, because they've got commitments that they do every weekend. This was a Destiny podcast. That's the reason they were here. As this shifted towards variety, that's kind of why I'm kind of taking a step back of trying to bring them in on a weekly basis and make this something where I either bring other guests on, which I will occasionally try and do when it makes sense, if there's anybody who is up for chatting me with about whatever. I would love to interview devs and things of that nature, or the gaming counselor on the show. Both are new Destiny YouTubers. I'll have to take a look. I've heard some things about people, but I will definitely take a look into other guests. And again, if I want to ask Scara if he wants to come on, if there's crazy stuff going on and the other two aren't busy, that's an easy thing I could do. There's a lot of people I can still bring on and ask if it's specifically Destiny related. There's a lot of people to talk to about that. But when it comes to Destiny for me, that's also something I'm probably not going to talk about on a weekly basis. Even if that's the only game you're playing, I'm playing that and other things. That's the biggest thing for me, is I also play other things. I just got done putting 40 hours into a game that I have early access to that I can't tell you guys about for a little while. And I'm going to work on potentially doing a review and maybe a tips guide for that one. Had a pretty good time playing that one, so we'll discuss that later. And there's other games that are coming this month. There's big one, like Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm gonna go crazy for Monster Hunter Wilds. And we'll kind of talk about that as we get a little closer to it, but you'll see content coming on the channel. There will be guides, there will be weapon guides, there will be monster guides. Monster Hunter I want to go big on. I really do, because I really had a good time playing Monster Hunter, and I've seen success on my channel helping you guys with certain topics, and that's my goal, is to do that for more things. Haven't played Destiny in about a month, and I'm lurking on the content though. That's where a lot of people are at. Some people still haven't played the new mission. What's up, Aries? How are you doing? And then some people are jumping in and then jumping right back out. So me, if I jump in, play the exotic mission 4 times, haven't done the expert part of it for the catalyst or like the puzzles yet, but I got the guide out there for all of you who are trying to run through it. So if you found that helpful, thanks. But then what am I going to do for the next 4 weeks? There's supposedly something that's been data mined for, you know, tokens like we kind of had previously, to be able to cash those in for a little bit of gear, it sounds like. So there may be a little thing before Heresy as a bit of a filler. We'll see what that is. And that's my goal for content for you guys, is to be able to, and sorry if my eyes are not always staring at the camera. For one, it's like above my monitor, so I don't have a great position for that. I probably should put like it right here, but I haven't done that yet. But when it comes to Destiny, it's like, if there's not a lot going on, I don't know if there's always that much to talk about. That's another reason why this podcast has slowly faded to what it is. But I still want to cover it when it makes sense for me. If there's a dungeon guide, if there's something big that's going on, if there's a guest like Scara I want to bring in, if he solved a big puzzle, I still want to talk about it when it makes sense, but I don't want to just revolve everything around one topic. That's kind of my goal. I know Marvel Rivals is huge. Aries is talking about that. A buddy of mine's playing it a bunch. Concurrents on Steam alone are in the 400,000s for every day. It's like extremely popular. Like Marvel Rivals right now is 394,000. Path of Exile 2. I put 150 hours in Path of Exile 2 and haven't really stopped much yet. So I've been playing quite a bit of different stuff, and that's where I've been having a lot of fun with all of that. So whether you're playing a lot, playing a little, you can still always expect me to cover the bigger moments, whether it be what's going on in Heresy's Act 1, because we'll see what's going on there. How is the new dungeon, and is there a guide for me to get through that? Still probably will put those out if it makes sense. As long as the views on the content are there, where you guys find them beneficial, like the effort that I put into it actually gets people coming back. But I mean, when it comes to build guides, when it comes to daily videos, when it comes to constant stuff over just Destiny, that is not my goal anymore. And for me, there's a lot that I look forward to covering. I've literally got a Google Docs spreadsheet, which I will try not to blind my face with it here, so I'll try and keep it kind of small. But I've got a Google Doc out there of all the game releases that are coming out, and it just keeps getting populated more and more with what I'm expecting to look at playing. So if I look at my game release calendar, January alone is kind of busy. February gets stupid, and then it's just probably going to continue to do that as it goes on. What's up, Larry? How you doing? So January alone has some stuff that's coming pretty quick. And then February, I will be very busy. Start of February is actually Heresy. It's a good place for that one to be at the very first part of February, depending on if I get a chance to review anything. It's still a good, like, timing-wise placement. Hopefully that I can cover a good amount of it. Awesome One says, I played the new exotic mission, trying to figure out how to beat the immune boss, and then I see a mini-boss. Quickly beat him, though bigness won't let me damage the main boss. Mini-boss was the boss. Exactly, yeah. So hopefully the guide is helping all of you out. And yeah, honestly, to be completely honest about my content on my channel for YouTube, I have had more success with non-Destiny content than Destiny content. And that is nothing against you guys. It's where you go for your Destiny content. And there are so many great creators for Destiny. It was a saturated market to begin with, but even like trying to catch up to some of the big ones. I mean, you got Fallout, Cactus, Datto, Aztecross, Mactix. There are so many big, amazing creators that put out great content. There are a lot of places to go for it. So it is a spread thin pool. And when it comes to my type of guides, there's also people who may make me look like a schmuck. Esoteric, for example, is one of the best players in the game and he even looks bored, I will tell you. He did a video recently, which is the faster way to the tower. And it was the 2 different landing zones in the tower. It's like, when I'm seeing content like that, I know everybody's a little bit like, what exactly should I cover right now? Some people are going to make challenges where I'm going to do a Grandmaster with less or weird weapons or other things, and absolutely more power to them. Totally get that. But my goal is not to just like live in the world of Destiny and challenges and builds and only Destiny. As I said, I put like 150 hours into Path of Exile, and my initial tips guide for Path of Exile got a great chunk of views, and I thank you guys for the support there. The thing is, none of my Destiny content's going to do that, because if you're going for Destiny, the vast majority of people are going to do big views on other people's channels. Like, massive respect to all of them, though, because they've built their view base and they do put out solid content. They do it quickly, typically. I do think solo, I'm typically a little bit slower, which is to my own, puts me where I am. But I do have a niche of an audience where you guys enjoy, whether it's my longer walkthroughs, the actual gameplay from start to finish to help you get through from beginning to end. All of that stuff, I know there are certain people who appreciate that, so I've still enjoyed that. I still play it, but like this past year has felt like a money grab. And Awesome One, that is totally fair. And that's kind of where a lot of people are in the world of Destiny. I mean, if you look up Steam database right now, so we're going to be 7/14 on a Thursday night. It's not Friday, but crappy weather. But it's like, where is it? The new, like, Act 3 for this episode dropped Tuesday. So we're 2.5 days, basically 2 days, 2.5 days removed from the expansion. Or from Act 3. And right now, currently right now, we are at 18,000 players. And if you look back in the history, that is still some of the lowest player counts that we've seen ever. Like, there was literally a peak on Tuesday. People jumped in, knocked out the exotic, got it done. And then days after that, we're down in the 20,000s. And the players get lower and lower. And just a lot of people are jumping in for the quick content and jumping right back out. That's where we're at. If you guys are wondering where anybody else is at for the podcast tonight, the early part of the episode kind of covered that, but being as Travis and Cognito do other variety podcasts, and they're busy on top of that, so pair that with, usually we don't only talk about Destiny. Destiny doesn't always have that much to talk about, and depending on if they've had a chance to play it yet, kind of will determine if they're going to be around for the podcast. And talking to them, the goal is to try and get them in here once a month. I may repeat that occasionally if people come in and ask, so sorry if this is a weird episode today, but hopefully if you listen to this one, you kind of know what to expect in the future. But yeah, it's like for them, when they talk about just gaming in general on one podcast, gaming in general on 2 podcasts, doing it again for the 3rd time with me, when those are already obligations that they're pretty much connected to, this was a Destiny podcast. That's why they came to talk about Destiny. As this is kind of veered into Destiny plus other things. Like, I mean, if Ares is in here, DCP, they don't just talk about Destiny. They might touch on it if there's stuff going on, and then they're going to talk about whatever else they're playing. But that's just where they talk about it. That's their one podcast. They don't have 3 where they talk about the same thing. That's why for the other guys, it's fair to kind of allow them to step back. But I still enjoy talking to them, still enjoy hanging out with them. Great guys, love them. Difference is going to be, they just may only be here on maybe a monthly basis. And we'll see what the cadence is. Maybe it's a little quicker if things are popping off in Destiny. Maybe it's a little slower. Maybe it's 6 weeks if things are really slow in Destiny where they come back through. So the door is always open for them. And as I said, we'll still have other guests. You know, some crazy puzzles going on, or I want to check with Scarrow, see what's going on. He's always a fun guy to chat with about Destiny, who's pretty in tune to things. If things start rocking off about Marathon, I will definitely bring Scarrow in because I know he's pretty in tune with that community and at least staying quickly to it. So haven't talked about other games yet, but we will get there. So I'm just trying to kind of sum up where the podcast is at. The guys will be around here every so often when it makes sense. Roughly monthly, maybe a little quicker, maybe a little farther apart. And then if you guys are coming in late, that's the gist. Is it's just me tonight. Probably will be me on frequent podcasts. And I don't know if I will do this every week. Sometimes I might do it every 4 or 5 days. It may be at weird times, just depending on if there's stuff that I want to talk about. And tonight we're just starting off with Destiny, but I also want to talk about just other things that have been going on in the world with regards to Elden Ring Night Ring. Like that, those signups are coming up for that. Games that I'm looking forward to this month. And then also, you know, RTX 50 series, and I've got a monitor coming. So I have some stuff to talk about tonight that's just kind of going on in the world of gaming and tech. And that's the thing, is like I am an absolute tech nerd too when it comes to CPUs, GPUs, hardware, all that crazy stuff. I follow it really, really close. Tech websites, monitors, I'm following that stuff constantly. Linus and Jay's 2 Cents and pretty much most of those places where you can get information. Gamers Nexus doing their interviews, figuring out which company seems to be not doing well. You can't believe I'm a tech nerd. Oh no, yeah, totally shocking, right? But I mean, you have a lot of people who will like sit there and play their game, but they don't care about the CPU that's in it, or a monitor that has a really good refresh rate, or color balance, or anything like that. So when it comes to some of that stuff, I know it won't surprise some of you if you've hung out with me or talked with me or heard me mention anything before. But for others of you, you're like, how much does he actually know? And when it comes to a lot of people, like when they're talking about hardware and that type of stuff, it's now when it comes to like AI and coding or anything like that, that's over my head. Love to branch out later, but when it comes to like computer hardware and what parts to get, it's like there's always like a cycle to it. And somebody was saying, oh, I just bought a 4080 or something, and now I feel like it's going to be, you know, not that special anymore because the new ones are coming right around the corner. And for me, that's just one of those things I'm always waiting for, like, when is the next cycle? When is the right time to buy? Hold on to the hardware for a couple generations, those types of things. And I followed that stuff forever. I just always have. When it's like, what is the next thing to get or play on or whatever, that's kind of where I'm going. So that's kind of the plan for the rest of the show tonight, is just me kind of talking about what's coming. And we will start with Revenant Act 3. For those of you who have played the mission, let me know in the comments your thoughts on the exotic mission, the changes that you experienced throughout, if you've had fun with the actual shotgun itself. Let me know what you guys think about that one as we're kind of moving forward through the show. But for me, I think the episode for Revenant was a step up when it comes to echoes, at least plot-wise. Not a big step up, I will say. There's still a lot to learn. And the delivery mechanism, obviously we know the way it was delivered is not how they probably would have intended it from the get-go, but they kind of condensed everything into 1 week for each of the acts, whether it made sense for the game or not, and they kind of had to make some of those changes that did and didn't make sense. So you had Act 1 delivered, and you're sitting there talking to Ido, talking to the holo projector, talking to Ido, going outside, and the same thing happened this week. The delivery of the story was weird, because it wasn't distinctly developed to be 3 weeks of story in 1 week condensed. So it's like you logged in, you played a couple of things, you played through Tomb of Elders, you did something, you might have played through it one more time, you got the weeks of the mission all at once. So then when you're done, like 90 minutes later, you're like, I don't know if that much happened. So I know right now Bungie is still trying to figure out what is their cadence for how things are delivered. And we will see what happens with Heresy, because they've had much longer to figure out how to put the delivery out there to us. Like, is it going to be a weekly thing? Is it going to be 2 weeks here, 2 weeks here? Is it still going to be all of the act at once? They haven't really mentioned those details, and I think they're going to wait as long as they can, see, in case they're trying to iron out or check on a couple of different things. For me, when it comes to this one, it was those moments that really kind of take you out of it, where Ido's standing in front of me, but I need to go talk to the holo projector to talk to her. Then you walk over there and she's gone, but she was at the holo projector, and when you're done talking, she's back over here. It's a little weird. Yeah, and then we've got the field works. We're planning to add context between the exotic missions run. What's up, Medivh? Same thing, the field work. That was probably meant to be delivered over weeks, and it wasn't. So when it comes to the way it was delivered, it was a bit of a kind of hodgepodge, just like trying to get it out the door to us and appease the player base to say, hey, we don't want to wait these 3 weeks for story content because it feels weird. So they gave us the full act at once. It is still a live service game. There are still things that are going to happen on a seasonal cadence to bring you back into the game, just like every other live game. Marvel Rivals is doing their season right now, putting a whole bunch of attractive outfits into the world, if you want to mention a couple of those, which is funny. That's totally fair. But like, that's just how seasonal content's going to work. So there's still going to be some cadence to delivery, even for Heresy. Now, maybe they do 1 week, 2 week, and 4 weeks. Maybe they try something a little different where, like, we want to do this delivery this way because we feel like there needs to be a little time for things to digest between information here, play a little bit, next week come back, here's the rest of this act. Maybe it's a 2 and 4. I really don't know what the split's going to be. And also, I don't know if any of the decisions that Bungie are going to make everybody happy. I'm pretty sure they're not, because everybody's going to want some different things. Some people want the weekly cadence because they're like, oh, that feels better. Some people like the 1 week on, 5 weeks off because then they can go play other stuff. But also making it feel, however you deliver it, making it feel right is going to be important. Because whether it's talk to Ido here, talk to the holo projector, talk to Ido, talk to Crow at a leaf out there, some of the delivery of just the voice dialogue in this episode felt off. Like, even the voice work could have been fine, which mostly it was, but just how you had to go interact with the voice delivery felt really weird. A lot of the time. Didn't really get a chance to do much of that. So, for me, the act itself, I would say, at least in the end of the act, fair warning if you haven't done the exotic mission, I am going to tell you how the end of it goes. You can skip ahead probably a little bit if you feel like you want to avoid spoilers. Probably not a big deal if you want to guess if something happens or doesn't. But when you get to the end of the act, we actually, theoretically, at least, unless he comes back in some way, we kind of take out Fickrel. And then you've got the Echo on the staff floating up in the air. You've got Mithrax and Aramis staring at each other. They both lunge for it. Big light. We're looking at the projection. Somehow, I don't know what we're in when we're looking at things. We're looking at the projection of Reese. You know, and Aramis actually recognizes it. Then we pop out. She's got it because the Echo chose her. And then she uses the Echo to kind of cleanse Nezarec from Mithrax. And Nezarec actually kind of gives her a respectful bow. And then Mithrax is going to be here for the Kell of Kells, which I listened to Bife, but it was like default. But he's going to be here for the Fallen. And Aramis is going to go be, like, no leader per se, but she's going to go try and help give the Fallen a bit of a homeworld somewhere else. So it was the general gist of what I got. There was much more of an ending this time around than we got last time with Maya Sundaresh falling back into the Radiolarian, just like drifting away. That was, to me, that was a nothing burger, because you went through this whole thing, tracked her down over the course of like 9 different weeks, and then in the end, she still got away, even if we did like hit her with a super or blaster or whatever the ending was. I think Osiris or one of us hit her with a big super, and then she kind of drifted away but wasn't totally gone. So it felt like we really accomplished nothing in the first episode. We did something this time. Now the Scorn, probably are still going to be doing a thing. They're still going to be in the game. They still have, I don't know who's running the Scorn, because if Fickrel's gone, that's going to be a little bit weird. But Aramis has potential. Aramis is out there in the world, and she is going to be giving us maybe a future destination for Apollo or Behemoth, or any of those future expansions that we deal with might have a different destination to go to. Or it could be something they just at least, you know, tuck that card away in case they want to pull it out for the future. But either way, that's the idea. She's not all evil. It was a weird circumstance where she did some pretty bad stuff. She was in prison. We let her out. That was a little naive on Ido's part, but it seems to have panned out okay. Mithrax. He's cleansed of the Nez Cafe, and she's going to take this powerful Echo and go wander off and do her thing. So there was at least more of an ending. Things happened to characters, all these like little side epilogue stories. This one had a little bit more of a bow on it. Last time didn't feel like we did much. So I appreciate the progression for Act 3 there. As for the exotic mission, it was kind of cool, but also not overly amazing to me. So I know Control Delete said he really loved the mission. It was great in his opinion. I know other people were kind of like, it's fine. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. Playing as a solo player, I didn't really have much of a struggle going through this. So I know if you were in a group, you probably just cruised on through on normal difficulty. Haven't played on expert, but I won't do that without a group, so I'm sure it probably would be fine there. When it comes to the organ, I thought that was a fun mechanic, and then you've got the notes in there. I'll have to figure out if it's just I've got pictures of the notes that I saw in the mission because I looked for a lot of them. I'm just gonna kind of want to look through and see where the certain like notes that are in the mission, how they're played, or what it is. So I'll have to see kind of where the musical notes work themselves into it yet. But it was a decent exotic mission. But I think when I was playing, because I was streaming on Tuesday, while we played through it the first time, and that's the thing, is this is another one of those times where this is an exotic mission you were probably meant to run week 1, week 2, week 3 of Act 3. And unfortunately, you had to run it 1, 2, 3 times back to back to back to actually get to the end, because all of the story of the stuff was available at the get-go. So I ran it 3 times, saw the end with Fickrel, so I knew what was going to happen there and I understood the mechanics. Then I recorded my run on the 4th time. So I ran it 4 times by myself on Tuesday. I got the gun. I saw what some of the secrets were going to be. I know the exotic catalysts could give it some benefit, but for me it's a shotgun, and I don't know if it's that amazing, and even Fallout was pretty meh on it. And it sounds like it's actually decent and could be fun, but also artifact specific, and we're gonna have 4 weeks of this artifact, then we get a new artifact. So then maybe if Void comes around again, cool. If Void's not really the theme next episode, then we may not have a whole lot of fun with it. So for me, I'm not in a giant rush. Maybe before the end of the season I'll do it. I probably should try and do it sometime soon so people are still actively playing a bit, so I could drag a couple of people in to help me get it done, and then kind of record the secrets and put that video up, and unfortunately probably be done with Destiny for the next 4 weeks. Now, I did hear there is, as I said a little bit earlier, there's something else. I think Howdish data mined it, or whatever, data miners found something. There seems to be something where, same thing we did with Riven, where you go and get the tokens and you do certain things, and you're probably able to use the tokens to pick certain gear or, you know, objects or whatever it is you're going for from a loot pool, and you'll be able to go through that. Yeah, that's Dizzy. Like, Dizzy for You had a pretty good description. It was a decent exotic mission, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't any more special than a Witch Queen campaign mission. That's actually probably a good way to put it. A good campaign mission, not on the level of Final Shape for like some of the cool stuff we did there, but a Witch Queen campaign mission with a little bit of the mirror dimension mechanics, but really all it was is like ignite the fire so you could go through whatever the next door is, and then if you're in the mirror dimension about halfway through the mission, you have a 2-minute timer, and then other than that, you're collecting motes from certain guys. It was light mechanics. It wasn't that crazy. And again, if you think back to Whisper, how many mechanics were really in the mission? It wasn't that, it was just on a timer. And then other ones we've had, but it's just like overall, it didn't feel like it was really pushing the envelope on any specific thing. The fight was manageable pretty much the first time through, and all of them I may have died once. Yeah, the jumping time in a Whisper, that's a different animal. But like this one just didn't feel all that stressful. And I do want to take a second, by the way. I know Gary DeBrown mentioned this. He said, just because I was talking previously about the guys not being here, he said he hopes Travis and Cog reconsider. And it's not that they won't be here. I do want to mention that. It's more just the idea that when it comes to the Last Word podcast, it was Destiny focused. And when there's like a good time for them to come back, they'll still pop through occasionally. But getting together and talking about Destiny every week doesn't make sense. And I don't want to, even for me, I don't want to feel like I'm making them rehash stuff that they're going to talk about or already talked about that week. So I feel like I'm making them repeat, and that's not really fair to them. So, but yeah, so we'll have some other thing. It might be next week because we have a short Act 3. We have 4 weeks because Heresy starts on February 4th. So we have a short 4 weeks. So maybe they're going to take this week for the exotic, or maybe, and then you get 3 weeks to do this other token based system. I don't know. It could be that fast though, because we have 4 weeks. It might be 2 and 2. Maybe the token thing's around for a little bit longer. I really don't know, but it's just something that seems to be data mined out there. Probably going to be coming, and it's a way to fill the end of the season. Probably have a little Iron Banner in there too, I think. I forget, to be honest. So that's kind of where Destiny is at for the moment. As Dizzy also said, the Dreadnought is coming, and we've got the dungeon coming in Heresy. Of the 3 episodes, this one had me the most excited to start. So hunting vampires never really happened. The whole like hunting vampires was really just, there are Scorn involved in these missions, but there wasn't really a lot of vampire hunting, so that was kind of not much. Echoes was a bust for me. It really was not a great episode. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't, to my opinion. Heresy has the best chance. 1, it's been the longest since they've learned lessons from anything that they've been doing. Has the longest chance for any feedback to make it into an episode. This is the final episode. So they probably were hoping for a bigger grand send-off, and they actually need the big grand send-off to send us into Apollo. That's going to be sometime over the summer. Now, I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know what cadence they're going to hold themselves to. If they delay it and they need more time for Apollo to be right, hopefully they take it. I don't want them to force content, because I feel like we've seen the bugs and everything that have been coming up, and that's probably something fair to mention too. When you hear QA, a lot of it gets laid off, and you've got other things, and there are so many bugs in the game on a frequent basis. It is kind of tough. It's one of those that is a bit difficult to, one, know if the game is actually bugged or if it's working correctly. And if you have that run through your mind, you've lost kind of the faith of some of your players. And that's a problem. It really is for me, because sometimes I'm like, is this a mechanic? Is this a bug? And that shouldn't really be a thing that's happening, hopefully, to Destiny, but it is right now, because content is coming quickly and the quality checks probably just don't have the time. I bet you if there is 1 QA person or 100, doesn't matter how many there are. Unfortunately, I feel like quite a few got let go. But no matter how many QA people there are, I will say don't blame the QA people, because I bet you they find a lot of these bugs, but it is the time, the bandwidth, and what gets prioritized, and if they can get fixed. Usually how it goes on that type of stuff. So QA, how big or small the team that remains, are still probably working their tail off. And unfortunately, they're like, hey, here's the new act and here are the known issues. That just literally means we know about this stuff. People have found it. We just haven't got the bandwidth to fix it, and we haven't prioritized the bugs for whatever reason. Same thing when it comes to basically every holiday event. I'm not even going to rush one of those anymore. 1, because they're a lot of the same. But if you were going to run the Dawning, you may as well wait the first 2 weeks, almost, it felt like, I think, on some stuff. Like the double perks on the Dawning took a while to come in there. So if you did play, you should probably save everything up and not cash it in. It's just, there's no real benefit to rushing things in Destiny unless you're a content creator trying to put out a guide for the brand new dungeon. That's literally it. And even then, it's like, okay. So that's even when it comes to content creation anymore. How much is there to cover? How much is what's going on? Like, when it comes to Tomb of Elders, how much is there really to tell you guys about Tomb of Elders besides here's some of the basic mechanics, here's how the kind of progression works, and you guys watched a little bit of it, but there's not that much to explain. You're just going through and grinding for loot. Onslaught, we've done Onslaught before. We understand there's not anything honestly that new either. So when it comes to something over Onslaught. There's not much for me to help you guys with. That's why there's not going to be a lot of content coming from me over stuff where it doesn't make sense. That's also why I'm going to be playing tons of other stuff. We'll get to that in a little while. But that's kind of the state of Destiny at the moment. So talked about that for 30 minutes, kind of covered where Cognito and Travis are going to be on the podcast. They'll pop back occasionally. Like February is going to be Heresy. If it takes them a week or so, and February is going to be stupid busy. So we may as well just jump into that. February is going to be stupidly busy. Kingdom Come Deliverance. I know Cognito wants to play that one. Avowed. That is an Xbox game. Cognito's going to play it. Travis probably will. Travis will be reviewing one or more of these probably big games, as he's always busy doing all that. Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza. That looks like a blast. I don't even know if I'm going to get a chance to play it, and I won't, because that's going to probably come out. Wait, did that move? Hold on. Pirate Yakuza. That's now coming out on the 20th. They were smart enough again to move, because Monster Hunter Wilds is on the 28th. As I said earlier in the show, Monster Hunter Wilds, I am going to play a buttload of. I love Monster Hunter. I just haven't jumped into one in a while. I played Monster Hunter World. I tried Ultimate on like my 3DS a while back. Monster Hunter World hooked me because I'd started to play Souls, that deliberate combat. As you fight more monsters, breaking off parts, you finally get that part so you can make that new piece of gear. Or if you want a certain weapon so you can level that stuff. Monster Hunter's a blast. I absolutely love it. You'll see a lot of that from me. But we're still sitting in January right now, and there's still stuff to play at the moment. So, January, what do we have? And this isn't even like an exhaustive list. But, January 25 calendar for game releases. Trying to do a site that's not going to blind me, so hopefully it's in dark mode. So when it comes to things that I am looking forward to, personally, Hyper Light Breaker. So it is a 3D, third-person, open-world roguelike. Sounds actually like a lot of fun. There's a lot of roguelikes I've played recently. I actually played Hyper Light Drifter, which is the previous game from this developer. It was an isometric, kind of like little isometric action game. And I played Hyper Light Drifter. Haven't beat it fully, but I got pretty far. There's like 4 areas to beat. And I beat the 4 bosses, which was a challenge. Those guys were no joke. And there's some progression in there as well. But I haven't fully unlocked everything because I need a few more things to finish it. But I actually got pretty far just actually on my holiday trip thanks to the Steam Deck. So that, their sequel, which is coming to PC Early Access January 14th, is what I'm looking forward to jumping into next week. So we'll see what's going on with the quest in Destiny. But the 14th next week is... I need a calendar. That is Tuesday. Of course it's Tuesday. Everything's on Tuesday. So Hyper Light Breaker. It's not from the Hades team. Their previous game is just Hyper Light Drifter. So it's a unique art style, kind of vibrant colors. It's hard to describe because it is unique, but like a vibrant color 3D world, third person, melee, kind of action roguelike. It looks like it's got potential. I have no idea how it's going to land. It's just one that I want to jump into. Early access, we'll see if it's polished and done or if it needs a bit more time in the oven. Again, no idea until we get there. So that's the first one just in January. You've got Dynasty Warriors Origins. Not really been a Dynasty Warriors guy. I don't know if it's one of those I really want to try and jump into with a code, see if I can. And this is kind of what I also have to do as well. For me, basically being a solo creator, I'm trying to always throw my hat name in the hat, as many different hats as I can. Sometimes I throw it in too many and they stack up together. So that I can like cover one. I've had that happen before, but I try and get my name in the hat for as many different games as I can, because if I can get early coverage, then prep something for YouTube, that's where I have the most success, is like, or trying to like no life something day 1 so I can put out a tips thing like day 2. I've done that before as well. So it just kind of depends on when I get access, what I have access to, what I get to play, and what is really pulling me. Like even if I don't get like access for Monster Hunter early, I don't know how that's going to go. I will talk to who I can and hope. I will still play the ever-loving crap out of that and be playing it a lot. There are 2 betas for Monster Hunter Wilds coming, and that is going to be some time that I'm looking forward to playing it again. Also trying to polish up a little bit of like guides and understanding and putting some stuff together for launch, because those are still pre-launch. That's all in February though, and February is crazy busy, so I've got to figure out my time balance there. But that February is just stupid busy. Anyway, back to January. We've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to PC. So if you're a PC player, do that one. I still haven't played Remake, so that's one that I haven't got to yet. Not saying there's anything wrong with the game. I actually really need to play just all of the Final Fantasy VII stuff. But does your progress carry over in Monster Hunter? No, I don't think so. It doesn't for that one. But there is one where it actually does. The first Berserker Kazan. I played that on a closed beta test, and I actually have that footage. Just don't know if I can share it, but I think I can. They are doing another beta. Come on. I swear it's like in the Discord. Why? I am not this crazy. Yeah, so the first Berserker Kazan. Probably try a terrible switch here. Yep. It's this game. So it's like a 3D action game. You've got Ben Starr doing the voice in there. I had a freaking blast playing it. And I will tell you, yeah, there was a Yeti to fight. There were a couple other ones. You're fighting kind of this thing that's up, kind of like sharing your body at a point. Yeah, and I was fighting some of the bosses for a while. But the art style and the combat, man, I will tell you, the combat in the first Berserker Kazan is so tightly, like, tuned. Like, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. I got my butt kicked as Control Delete saying. I got my butt kicked for a while on the second and third boss. I beat the first one. I was like, oh, we're cruising. Second one cooked me for a good while, but then I started to figure it out. It's got some good parry mechanics, very good timings there. Third boss, man, he worked me for a while. And the thing about the previous closed beta test, I had like kind of timed it wrong, and it was going to go down on Sunday at like 2 a.m. I ended up beating the final boss of the closed beta at like 1:45 a.m. my time for that beta. It is legit very cool. So he was once celebrated as the hero who saved the empire from the fearsome berserk dragon. However, the jealousy of those around him brought around his demise. Falsely branded a traitor and mercilessly tortured, he was exiled to the snowy mountains and with severed tendons in both arms. Just kind of rough. But the idea is, if you watch any of the things about it, I've got like the animation and art style and everything that's done in it. They did an excellent job because the world looks like a good open action world, like whether it's Lies of P or Elden Ring. The world is really well made. But the art style of your character has that like anime feel to it. And I'm not like a big anime person, nothing against it, just never really got one to hook me. But I will tell you, like when you're playing, oh man, does it feel so good. So this is one for me. I'm 99% sure because I'm sitting here like looking in the Discord. What was it? I was just like looking at the beta. Yeah, there's like commentary, and then yeah, there's new armor if you play in it. Where is announcement probably? The release date trailer, that one, 72-hour emoji. I swear I'm not crazy because I took a picture of it. But I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be another, like they're going to re-release the demo kind of thing. But it's going to be like January 16th. So I've got like a couple days where that's probably going to land. So, and I saved that picture or something somewhere. I think I put it in my Discord maybe. Yeah, that's where I put it. Yep, January 16th, 2025. There you go. Sorry. Yeah, that for me, first Berserker Kazan, I want to jump back into that demo, kind of master it again, really get a feel for kind of like an opening tips, and the progress from that is actually going to carry over. So that one is next week. It's next Thursday that one's going to be dropping. So I will probably stream that day. Hopefully I'm a little better at it this time around, but we will see for sure. But yeah, Thursday the 16th, progress will carry into the game in March, and that comes out like March 20. Where's my spreadsheet? Different page. March 28th is the first BerserkerCon release date. So play the demo now. It's probably going to be sitting out there available, but that progress will carry over. And really the way the progress is going to carry over, I'm pretty sure you just start the beginning of the game. I think we're going to see this everywhere soon upon release. It's going to surprise people. Yeah, it's a fantastic game. So that's one of the next ones for me, is that demo coming back, and that's the 16th. So Hyperlight Breaker, I'm really looking forward to. That's the 14th. Like Dynasty Warriors, I don't know if I'll get into. Probably not. Demo on the 16th for first Berserker Kazan. And then, for me, the other one is Eternal Strands. So let me see if I can go find a page for that. All right. Try this again. There we go. Why is it not showing the whole page? That's weird. Huh. Up that's there. It's like not centered. One sec. Oh, see, this is a weird thing about OBS right now, is I'm trying to... Oh, I think I know what it is. Hold on. Nope. Nope. There it is. All right. I knew I was missing something there. Back to 100% size. And then just back to a reasonable part of the window. There we go. Okay. So, Eternal Strands. This is coming out on the 28th. So yeah, I actually got to play this early. I'm kind of in their creator program, so hopefully get a chance to review it. But I actually got a chance to stream a early access kind of piece of this, and the devs jumped in, was asking them questions. This is one I'm looking forward to a lot. Now, I can't say anything about it. So this is let's see if I can actually play this gameplay trailer. Turn that down just a bit. Third-person action adventure is the best way I can describe it. So you've got really big arcs and these like colossal size enemies. And that's kind of one of the things too, probably a good way to like pull this back. So you'll notice, so this is the Arc of the Living Flame. So this is action adventure. It's not flying. Well, you can launch, if that makes sense. So there are three main powers in Eternal Strands. You have fire, you have ice, and you have kinetic. You have control of kinetics. However you want to say that. Can you see? What is that power? It's like Jean Grey. It's like, what is her? Telekinesis. Thank you. But you have fire that you can control, you have ice that you can control, and you have the kinetic nature that you can control. And you'll notice here, you can pick like pieces of armor up, you can pick big objects up, and you can throw them. In this one, you'll see, like there, she's going to grab the actual fireball that the boss is throwing at you, grab it with like a kinetic grasp, and then throw it back at the boss. I've done that. So like that's one of the examples. And it's this idea of mastering all of these abilities and also tackling one, there's an action adventure, there's voice dialogue throughout like the whole thing, fully voice acted story. But it's the idea of mastering these powers, exploring the worlds, finding what's available. But there's also crafting to it as well. So the gear on her back right now looks like probably kinetic bow, because it's like red, blue, or purple. I think it's the kinetic bow. And you'll have a two-handed weapon. You'll have a sword and shield, and then you'll have a bow. But there are versions of those that can do certain things. So, for example, like the frost short sword and shield, I can do a charge up attack that sends this like kind of expanding wall of ice in front of me that will attack in front of me, work as a wall of ice, chill the area, do all of those things. Same thing with fire is probably like a big, I think there's a dual wielding sword where you can do a big spin with the fire sword, stuff like that. And these abilities allow you to pretty much mess with the elements, but also tackle all of these things in front of you. It's made by Mike Laidlaw as one of the main creative directors, and he is from previously BioWare, if I remember correctly. So let me make sure. Dragon Age. So he left BioWare in 2018, worked on previous Dragon Age games, and now he's at Yellow Brick Games, and that's kind of what he's been up to lately. So this is their first game is Yellow Brick Games, and he's the chief creative officer over there. So I had a good time with the early access that I've played. I'll probably get a chance to review it. And you've got voice acting, story, and we'll just see where it lands. Like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be at a minimum of 7. Like, what I played so far felt very polished. Combat's fun. And a little bit of what makes it unique is you'll find these random resources, whether it's like breaking down boxes. You'll just find resources from a whole bunch of things. You can get resources off of the big like things that you fight. And those resources, as you accumulate those, say you'll find schematics for armor or weapons. And there's going to be usually like a couple of slots on the armor and weapons. And those resources that you find have different rarities, but they also have different properties to them. Sometimes you might get some resistance. Sometimes you might get a little less weight, more power. And just have to remember that you can teleport. I don't think you can fully teleport. You can fast travel. Yeah, fast travel is nice. And I know it's going to be big. I only got to play in one world against one, like the one that I showed you guys. There's a lot more when it comes to bosses and things like that. Teleport back to base. There's a lot of things that you can do in the game. I think it's going to be like minimum a good game, but I think it has potential to be a great game. And for me, an action adventure, great game, like fun combat where you're fighting really big enemies, but also control of elemental powers, crafting so you can have some control over your build style. All of that is going to lead into something pretty cool when it all comes together, I think. And it's definitely one that you'll want to watch my channel for as we get to late this month when embargo is up. I'll see what hopefully I can tell you. So that's Eternal Strands, January 28th. That's just January. Thought it was great that the bosses can be defeated in different ways. Oh yeah, you've got different attacks. You can light them on fire. You can freeze them. Like there's one where you make like an ice wall. Well, if the big guys are like lumbering around and walking, you can freeze with like the ice thing. If their foot's on the ground, you can freeze them to the ground and kind of like stun them for a second. Eventually, then they'll like fight and pull their leg off the ground. It's one of those that's cool to have like the world manipulation with your powers. Lighting things on fire is also going to light the floor, the trees. You got to be careful because you can kind of damage yourself. It's one of those that's, I think there's a lot of potential to have fun. I also think everybody who plays through is probably going to have a different like set of weapons and set of armor and crafted resources that you put into those things. Everybody's probably going to play it a little bit different. There may be some like things that work well for certain situations, but I think everybody's going to have a bit of a unique playthrough in how you tackle the problem, which I think will be fun. So look forward to that one. More on that to come, so stay tuned. But that's January 28th, so damn near the end of the month. Control Delete says the art style is a bit cartoony. So did you look at Dragon Age Veilguard and also say that was cartoony? And it just, when it comes, everybody's going to have certain things that work. Like, I'm not so, nope, this looks even more cartoony. Okay. Let me see if I can find a story trailer, perhaps. So, where is developer update? Trying to see if they have setting gameplay. Oh, I have the okay, so I have the audio going. Here, let's see. Let me give you guys one more trailer preview. Looks almost like Genshin. It's not Genshin. I will tell you there's no waifu simulator in here, so you're safe there. Let me go ahead and switch back. And we will play.
Hello, I'm Mike Laidlaw, Chief Creative Officer at Yellow Brick Games.
So this is kind of a good explanation of how the world can be. So you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen, at some point my hands are never going to be in the right place. It looks very grassy. The left side is covered in ice. Like there's a point where it's that icy where it's potentially going to be a big threat to you to stand in there. And you may either need to find gear or abilities or something just to be able to get through that area, because walking through it may freeze you and hurt you. So that's just one of those alone where, looking in the trailer, you can see those moments of like, this green area you can probably go wandering off in. This area that's over here, something special is going on there, and it's frozen over, and you actually probably would be hurt if you try to get in there early on.
And welcome.
So that's the big arc right here that you guys can see. Holding the big giant pot on his head with fire, you'll walk around, and the way you attack each of the bosses, I've been told, is going to be different. So none of the bosses, hazardous biomes, things can light on fire. If there's also weather that's going to be involved, I'm pretty sure as well. So things can be colder in general or warmer in general. We'll just have to see how all that kind of works out. But when I was attacking this guy, there's pieces of his armor you can actually break off. And then eventually when you break off enough pieces of this guy's armor, you'll expose his head. Will kind of like no longer be on fire. And what you'll do is you'll climb all the way up to the top and you'll actually pull out his core. And it says eternal strands. You're like connected by if you literally think of Destiny like strand weaving, it's not that far apart. It's not related to it, but it's like there are the strands and the ways the world is connected. But you'll literally like pull on the strands that have this like fire core in this big giant boss you're looking at here. You'll pull that out. And that's like how you can beat him without having to go through his entire health bar. But that also allows you to make some progression in your abilities, is beating the boss in a different way. Like you can just take the health bar all the way down, but beating them in a different way and figuring out what those mechanics are allows you to make progression on your character in a different way by making your abilities more powerful. So
to the world of Eternal Strands, a new fantasy action adventure game where the world around you is your weapon. In Eternal Strands, you will embark on your journey as a young, magic-wielding weaver named Bryn.
That's Bryn. So if you're wondering the art style, that is the best way I can show it to you. That is your main character that you're going to be seeing. There are fantasy characters in here, so I know one of the characters is a bird, like a big owl that you'll be talking to, amongst other things. But all of the gear on you can change looks. As I said, the resources that you put in the gear can change how your character looks. And if the armor is normally like a, metal color, but as you put something in there, it might have a little bit of a glow to it, or might not glow, but it might change to a bit more of a bronze color, have a gold accent, or a little bit more blue if you're going for all those things. So your character is going to look how your armor is built, but the resources used are also going to affect the abilities, like how much stamina, how much cold resist, and that's kind of where all that's going to come into play. So it's going to give it a different feel to it.
She seeks to unravel the secrets of the Enclave, a once thriving center of magic, now left in ruins.
And if I go back about a second, this is the area that I got to play in early access. I don't know if they're British or not, and there's probably multiple different accents in the game, but this is the main area, and the area is a lot bigger than what you see. This is just where I fought the big boss. So he kind of wanders around that outside path and then over somewhere. And it's also got like Zelda-like climbing. It's a stamina system for climbing. The stamina is quite forgiving. At least it was early on for me for a lot of the climbing around. So any of the buildings that you see, you can just typically climb almost straight up on half of them after a little while. So there's a lot of freedom to explore. There are some invisible walls in places, I'm sure, just like anything else, because it is like a level-based system. But there's a lot of freedom to search and explore each of the areas, and you're going to have to find some stuff in there. So I think this is one, I don't know if this is going to get the eyes on it that I hope for, but I do hope it does get some eyes, because I think it's got a lot of potential here, and I can't say any more until we get to embargo time, but...
Left in ruins.
So this, I never saw this. This is a different zone. So you got a big statue back here. Like, don't imagine you'd climb up there, but any of these towers, you might be climbing on the outside. There's also this kinetic launch. So it literally looks like a tube, but it's like this kinetic force. And if you literally put it in front of you and just run into it, it launches you like you're being shot out of a cannon, and you can aim that thing all over the place. That was a fun thing that I got to use, but my character was so like maxed out. I had almost every ability in the little demo that I got to play. It's unfair to say when you get what abilities and that type of stuff, but that's one of those that was really cool. But this is a different area. It looks similar in theme with some of the buildings and structures, but this looks like a different zone. And there tends to be like interior spaces, or like down under the caves, or where there's a lot more secrets in the game than you would expect too. Places you'll find, secrets you'll go to, enemies you'll fight, that kind of stuff.
At your base camp, you'll forge bonds with members of your Weaver Band, who will support you in your...
So again, fantasy, so you got the guy with the horns, and again, that's a race from like D&D type stuff that I should just know and I don't.
expeditions with their various skills.
You could upgrade your base camp as well for certain things. That's her whole deal.
You've worked.
This is Aurea, kind of your, I think, main counterpart in the base, but she's like this big, badass bird owl thing. She's awesome. Tiefling, thank you. See, I know there's somebody out there that knows this game looks like it's gonna be a long game. I don't know how big it is, but I have a hunch that it's probably going to be more than people expect.
Hard for this, and I have faith in you.
Select your next quest and customize your gear before
here's the
venturing
gear.
out through the Loom Gate on your way to discover the fate of these shattered lands. In the Enclave, you can climb
There's
and
the
interact
climbing.
with nearly everything you see. The mantle, the magical cloak.
Now, I will tell you, it is not a tree puncher. I heard a buddy of mine call like survival games a tree puncher. That's not what you're doing. But whatever happens to the environment, whether you knock down a tree, maybe you chop a bush while you're hitting an enemy, resources were appearing just everywhere. You can intentionally go after some, but there's a lot of them just the world is... You do not have to go chop down trees for resources. That's just an example of you can chop down a tree, but also you might be fighting an enemy, shoot a fireball at them, things blow up, and things happen in certain ways. So it's all kind of just, it's a lot more destructible than you would think, but then the destruction will lead to resources being on the ground that you can pick up. Some have higher rarity if you're fighting more difficult enemies, and then all of those are going to be how you make your gear better and better.
On your back grants you control over frost, flame, and kinetic magic. Combine these elements in creative ways to manipulate the environment to your advantage and defeat your foes.
Like, I can tell you how much fun it was. Yeah, it's not a survival crafting game. That's not what it is. It is just a fantasy action adventure with powers. Kind of reminds you of Fable. I can see a little of that. It's not going to have your like light and dark system, but your control of the world and magic powers. Not survival crafting, action adventure for sure. But just like, you'll have some crafting and customization to your gear is the best way I can say where those resources come into play. And a lot of the time is when you were killing enemies, they would drop some resources, and then when you're back in camp, you're like, all right, how am I customizing my gear to do certain things?
But the Enclave's foes come in all sizes.
And that's, I mean, if you just see the scale of you versus the big one there.
Behold, an arc. This colossal 25-meter construct wields immense power.
There's you freezing the foot. You can try and climb up it. They can also pick up and throw you off.
Pick your battles. Rather than risking your loot, return to base camp. A day has passed. Reforge your gear with your hard-earned resources.
This is what I'm talking about. So you got weapon power, resistances, and weight. And the better resources you put into that gear, the better off you're going to be for whatever it is, but certain resources will do certain things. That's what I noticed was you may find a thick hide from killing a normal enemy, but if you kill a frost enemy and you get like their chilled fur or something, you're going to be able to take that chilled fur, put it into a piece of gear, and maybe you have more cold resistance, stuff like that. Time passes for night and day. The biggest thing about the night and day cycles, if I remember correctly, is kind of just the way the world state is, because it kind of just time passes and weather happens in the world. It's not, certain things can be night and day specific, but it's not a big factor. It's more just the fact that it's kind of time is progressing, but there's not like Persona where the school year progresses or anything like that. I think it's just kind of a night, day, kind of keeping an idea of kind of how long you've been playing more than anything.
To even the odds against.
So there you go. There's your different resources. You got your basic, you got your green uncommon, like rare, magical, all that stuff. But all these are going to do different things. And you'll notice one will take the weapon power up by 3, but the cold resistance would go down by 1, depending on what you put in there. And the resources also come back. So if you have basic resources, you'll get those back.
No two battles are the same, as epics roam freely between maps, and extreme weather alters the battlefield in this true physics playground.
So that's the idea, is you've got weather that's going to happen. The big arcs that you fight, you can find them in any map. The weather can also be different on different maps. If you need to go fight one guy for whatever reason, you might have to go face unfavorable weather, because it looks like here he's fighting the stricken earth instead of like the green forest and like peaceful weather. This looks a bit cloudier. I can't tell if it's cold or hot or whatever's going on, but the effects, the main effects of like heat, cold, all come back to your chilling powers, fire powers, but also their chilling and fire powers, and then kinetics in there too, because throw something at me, I'll catch it and I can throw it right back. Like there's just some fun to be had in here, and I think people, if they give it a shot, are going to have a good time.
Harvesting strands from these formidable adversaries allows you to weave new abilities.
So that's the idea of like when you do certain things to whatever you're fighting, it will expose their center core, and then that's her pulling on like the actual core threads, and that's where you're eventually going to get that core, level up an ability, and be able to kind of take things to another level.
Allows you to weave new ability.
So you'll fight the big bosses, but you actually have a reason to go back and fight them again, but you'll fight them in a different location. You might fight them in different weather. All of that's going to come into play.
Into your mantle. With new powers at your command, and the world is your weapon, you hold the key to uncovering the mysteries of the Enclave. Take up the mantle in Eternal Strands.
So that is Eternal Strands. Hopefully that's a reasonable preview for you guys, and if you were listening to the audio version of the podcast, the video may help you a little bit, but we'll head back into just me talking to you guys for now. That's a big one for me for this month. Yeah, it looks very cool. I got to play with a lot of the powers. I got to play on that one level against the fire guy with a pot on his head. And I did kind of figure out the mechanics of like chinking off pieces of his armor, and then eventually like hit one here, broke off enough pieces. You know, it's like kind of wailing away on him. And then finally figuring out like you do enough, his head no longer is on fire. And you've got to figure out which spots on him you've got to hit a thing off of and then fully break a piece out of. But when you break that piece, you're going to get a resource that's like really, really rare when you get a piece off of these arcs. And if you do enough of these fights, you're starting to accumulate these resources, or you can take your gear from pretty basic to like way, way, way better. So you've got the purpose. So there's a reason to fight a big guy multiple times. And then if you get efficient at it, you can actually get more of that really good resource to make yourself more powerful on top of improving whatever ability they're going to give you. So that is Eternal Strands. Big one for January. Hoping it gets a chance to find success, because everything else that's coming in February is a little bit later. Episode 3 for Heresy is February 4th. Kingdom Come Deliverance and Civilization 7, that's later. Avowed, Yakuza, Monster Hunter Wilds, that's later. And again, I'll go big on Monster Hunter Wilds, but that is kind of January. The other thing to know, Night Rain is actually looking to do their signups tomorrow. Elden Ring. Is it tomorrow, the network test? Signups start... Wait, can I do it right now? Network test will be coming in February. This is another problem. The network test for Elden Ring Night Ring is it's on PS5 and Xbox, so I'll have to move my PS5 back in here. But the network test is in February, but registration starts tomorrow. So go ahead and throw my name in there, which I probably already did, but I'll do it again. So we'll see if we can. I don't know if it's going to be open, because I would imagine a network test should probably be open. It's on Xbox and PlayStation. It's actually not on PC, surprisingly. But that's already. So that is tomorrow. So make sure if you are interested, sign up. For sure, a good idea to do. And then after that one, February, sometime in February. There's not a great time in February for that network test to drop, because Kingdom Come Deliverance, if I get to play it early, which I don't know if I'm going to. I didn't play the first one. I'm not like as keen into that one. And if I miss it, it's probably okay, because I think Kingdom Come Deliverance could be like a 100-hour game. Not a small feat. It's also a week after episode 3, and it's also like 3 days after the dungeon. See how much time we have for that one. Then, Civilization 7, not a game for me, but I know for plenty of PC players, Civilization 7 is a big one. And then you get later in the month, and it's just going to get a little crazier. And Monster Hunter Wilds is on the 28th, which basically means March is Monster Hunter Wilds for me. So I'm trying to do what I can in February. Destiny's going to have some part in February, but I'm also trying to play as much other stuff as I can. And as I have some of you guys here on both platforms, whether it's live streaming on YouTube or on Twitch, either place that I've got you guys, a lot of what you've noticed that I find success in are my tips guides and things of that nature. So that's typically what I put out on the channel, because that's where the success is. But if there's other stuff you want to see from me or other things you want to see me cover, hit me up on Twitter, comments, whatever. I mean, my email's there, just try not to abuse it, but all of those places to reach out to me and kind of see what's going on and what's up. So that's kind of the gaming for. I'm going to try and keep the gaming updates for like start of the month or end of the month podcast like this one. I'll try and stick to January for now, because I could spend hours on what's going to come in February. But I did want to put some time into Eternal Strains to kind of plant that seed for you guys into the month. Stay tuned. Let you know that one's coming. The final piece for me is computer hardware. So for me, I have an RTX 3090, and there is nothing wrong with that card. I can play a lot of things, play them pretty well with everything that's going on, and I have a 5950X. I'm going to sit on my 5950X for a good bit now, mostly because I'm trying not to do all of my upgrades at once. But I am looking at an RTX 5000 series. I'm trying to get a 5090, because when it comes to graphics cards, 4 years between generations is like a pretty good leap. You're getting 2 generations worth of upgrades, of progression, of all that type of stuff, and the 5090 will absolutely just kick the crap out of my 3090. My 3090 is still better than most of the cards that people play with, because if you look up the Steam stats of what people use for graphics cards, hardly anybody's playing at 4K. 1440p is still less than 1080p. A lot of people just play like. Now, the other thing that happens is a lot of people play at high resolution and decent frame rates, but the other side is a lot more people play at high frame rate because it's competitive games and stuff like that. Yeah, the biggest thing when it comes to the graphics card that I'll be going for, you play 2K. Yeah, a lot of people play 1440. I played 1440 for a while, and then I got the monitor I have right now is 4K, and it's 144 hertz. 1440p is nice. I like my 32-inch 4K, because it's big enough that the pixels actually will make a difference. There's 4K at 27 inches, but I feel like the landscape it's probably crisp as can be, but I feel like it's unnecessary. But I like my 32-inch 4K. That's just a preference that I've got. And what I actually want to work on is getting an OLED, just because when it comes to IPS or TN panel versus an OLED, I've got the TV. I finally got a TV a few years back for an OLED. I think I got an LG C1. So what is that? 4 years old now, almost, or 3.5, whenever I bought it. Probably 3, since I'm sure I got the C1 late. A projector, nice. But the idea of an OLED for me is like just really enjoying what I'm looking at, because a lot of the time for me, if I'm recording or streaming or whatever, I don't get a chance to play at high frame rates very often. I'm also not always playing games that need 144 or 240 frames. Now the OLEDs do have a really good refresh rate. They're at 240 hertz. But more, I want to have good HDR experience. I want to have, which is hit or miss depending on the game, Windows and all that stuff. But also I just want to have something that has like a really good SDR picture. I want to have like good black contrast. I want to have a nice picture to look at, because if I'm playing at 60 frames because I'm recording or doing what else, I could take a 5090, turn on every bell and whistle that that game has to offer for ray trace, shadows, and lighting and all that stuff. And hopefully when I put out content for you guys, it is the best possible piece of content that I can get. And I'm also at the 3000 series. When it came to the 4000 series, even like the 4060 has frame generation. So if you're running on a card, even if it's 1080p or 1440, HDR is very hit or miss. Even on like my monitor and stuff, it is hit or miss. HDR is kind of, you take it, and like if I'm recording on OBS, I don't do HDR on there either, because content is HDR and recording content that's in HDR and then getting to OBS. It's a whole mess of insanity. But if I can have a really good SDR picture on an OLED monitor, and I can turn every bell and whistle on for like 60 frames per second, I'm going to have a really pretty picture to look at. And then 60 frames is all I'm really going to do for recording and uploading. But that 4K 60 image that I can record is going to be extremely pretty and hopefully very smooth. So when I upload it, that's also what you guys are going to be doing. Yeah, the biggest thing I'm missing from 3000 to 4000 is a lot of the DLSS features. A lot of that's going to be, I don't have any path trace. I don't have any ray tracing. Because it's, for one, it would just cripple my card. Ray tracing keeps getting better and better. And when you can turn on ray tracing for some of these games now, they look absolutely gorgeous. Like Alan Wake, like if I can get an OLED and then somehow go back and play Alan Wake, like I played that for review. I didn't get to publicize too much because by the time I got a review and dealing with like some error, but I had a really, really good time in Alan Wake. But like playing it on like a 5090 with DLSS 4, full ray tracing, 60 frames on an OLED, that would be a amazing experience, and also like really immersive for the color and depth that I'll be looking at. So that's kind of why, one, I'm looking at the OLED, two, I'm looking at the 5090. But I'm waiting on like the the 9800X 3D. That's a fantastic gaming chip. The 9950X 3D is going to be a great creator thing. I have the 5950X. That part still seems to be doing fine. And if I'm not trying to push a crazy amount of frames, that's the biggest thing. If you're going for frame rate, a lot of the time, not always, and not everything, but if you're going for frame rate, CPU matters. So if you want to have the absolute best frame rate on like a 480 hertz monitor and you're trying to play Counter-Strike 2 on 1080p at 480 frames per second, crazy stuff like that, that is where your CPU actually matters the most, because the bottleneck for frames comes from the CPU. That's why when you see people do CPU tests, they'll do them at lower resolutions, because the bottleneck for 4K, for example, and ray tracing, that's on the graphics card. So they're very different animals in what you need. If I'm going for a pretty lower frame image, my stuff I've got's probably going to be fine. If the GPU can send a good picture to the CPU, then I should mostly be okay, I'm thinking. Not a fan of heavy reliance on upscaling these days for games to reach max frame rates. And that's an interesting one, because the 4090, and they said the 5070, which the 5070 MSRP, which take that or leave it, scalpers hopefully don't ruin everything, but, and then you'll have a like an Asus card or anything else. So like even if the base model's like 550, the AIBs are probably going to be 650 or something like that. I haven't built a stream dedicated PC. I have a second box behind me. Haven't quite decided on that one yet. I need to mess with that with all this stuff. With the 5090 coming in, I really need to kind of tinker with that, because I have my old Threadripper behind me, which could probably handle just like taking the stream output and uploading it. And I'll probably have a leftover monitor when I get my new one, because I have 3 right now, but it's a mess of resolutions and everything else. Biggest thing for me is just going to be, 1, managing the OLED for care, but 2, I need to tinker with, just sending that signal out to a stream PC. So I got to mess with that a little bit and see what's going on. Put your old card into it. I have a buddy that would potentially use my old card, so I probably will give that to him. My 3090 doesn't need to sit in a streaming PC. That's probably overkill. It just needs something. Yeah, I've got the Elgato capture card. I've got that I could probably use. So it's kind of, Just depends. I need to mess with the whole setup and everything. It just is more work than I typically want to do. But I have a. Uh, I don't know if I'll give it to him per se. I might give it to him at a substantial discount than what I bought it for. Um, just depends on what they're going for, what I can get for it. I would give my friend a discount. So I mean, if 30.90, if it's like, I don't know if they're going for $400 or $500, do something under that. But I don't know what they're going for right now. So that'll just be a game. I first got to get the 5090. I'm also looking at a power supply. So right now it's going to be power supply and 5090 for me. And when it comes to the 5090, like MSRP on the 5090 is $2,000. So not a small thing, but I've been planning for this for a while and kind of expecting it. So I've been tucking money away. Not cheap. Am I going single or dual rail on the PSU? There's a couple I'm looking at. Good question, actually. The biggest thing that I'm looking at, biggest thing for the power supply that is important is going to be the new, for one, to have enough watts. So it's going to be 1200 or 1300 watts. I haven't seen the Lee one, but the biggest thing is ATX 3.1 and PSI 5 and PCI 5.1. Those have the new compatibility for the brand new cards, the power supply, so the cable can actually deliver the 600 watts and not burn itself out, like all of that stuff. 5090 is going to add $15 to the electric bill. Honestly, probably a little bit, but it's fine. Oh yeah, everything I'm looking at's fully modular. Yeah, it's up to 575 watts on the card, so 1300 watt power supply is probably a little overkill. 1200 would work, but either of those are what I'm looking at. Yeah, it's a beast. But yeah, Lee makes some damn good stuff too. Yeah, if you ever are curious about literally thinking about a PC, buying a PC, wondering about good parts, please hit me up. It's like a little hobby I love looking into. I've spec'd out PCs for people before. I'm happy to help discuss that type of stuff. If you have ever questions about it or anything. So if you're ever wondering about PC hardware in general, that's just a fun hobby I have, but I tend to try and stay somewhat informed. So I'm not going to claim to be the be all end all, but I do like to help people if I get a chance to. Biggest thing is just how much power is available. So like Lee makes a good one. I'm trying to see how big the power supply is. That's PCI 5.1, multicolor, which is good. ATX 3.1, good. How many watts? 750, 850, 1000, 1200. Nice. There we go. Question is now, can I even find one to buy? Lee 1200. What is it? Edge? Edge Gold. Lee Edge Gold 1200. Edge Gold. And the Edge series, not the Edge Gold. Oh, that's the Edge series Gold. Oh, what is that hub? What is that? It's a good value as well. It's currently out of stock, but I will look into that one as well. They have a really weird shape to theirs. It's like an L shape. Platinum fan supports, yep. That's the Edge series. That's 850 watts. I'm looking at the... Oh, that's the Platinum. 229 for a Platinum, though, is not bad. I've seen way worse than that. That L shape is breaking my brain, though. Oh, that is so weird. Because basically, it's like... It's an L, and normally power supplies are just a wall, and you're plugging stuff into the back of it, and you're good to go. This one is a funky shape. It is... So it's like an L, and the actual connectors are down here, and then this is like the bulk back here of the power supply, and it looks like all your connectors go in here, and then they will like curl out. It's a weird shape. And it's not more surface area per se for more plugs, it's just a different... The biggest thing I would probably worry about on that is the... I would just have to figure out what that's going to do. Oh, that's so funky. Data Molex motherboard. I will look into that one. That is weird, but Lee makes good stuff, so they're definitely worth looking at. So They're definitely one to always keep an eye on. My next case might be a Lian Li. I've looked at a couple though. So yeah, that's kind of like the computer hardware stuff that CES did. Is OLED monitors are now there's like 4K 27-inch, and that's kind of the balance of really dense pixels, because you take the 33 million pixels of a 4K image, but you take it from 32 inches, which I like, by the way, because I enjoy, because my desk is bigger. That's the other reason I will say, like, I look at a 32-inch monitor for me because I bought a giant butcher block that is like 3 feet deep, so my monitor sits a little farther away than if I'm like up close to a 27-inch monitor. And I've also got monitor stands so I can kind of move it back and forth depending on how my eyes go when I get 40. But that's why the 27 for me was a little small. Like, this is a 27, this is a 27, but this is 1080p, this is 1440, and this is 4K. So if I have the 4K monitor for like work, that one's going to stay. The OLED is just going to be for gaming, so I can watch the OLEDs, hopefully not have too much burn in. The 27 is probably going to be the backup. The 1080p monitor, I don't know what to do with that. I probably need to hook up to the old PC so I can figure some of this stuff out. Eventually, like, I want a third 4K 32-inch monitor, but just a cheap one. And I've looked for some of those. Occasionally, I'll see them on deals. Like, there's a, what is it, a Samsung? Sorry, my face is bright white right now because I'm so close. Yeah, like a 32-inch 4K. And it's got like basic HDR10, which is just like the old whatever. You can get an acceptably used version of that monitor for $220, $230. Used good, used very good, used like new, and that's what I was looking at. That way I just have 3 monitors that are 4K, that are 32 inches. So it's a bit more uniform. They're not all going to be the same power, but at least they're all the same resolution would be nice. So trying not to spend all the money right now, but yeah, the Lian Li will, yeah, because I was looking at an MSI one that was PCI 1300 watts, but that's, I gotta look at that Lian Li one. That is so funky looking. But yeah, that's gonna be for another time. So yeah, I try and keep up with a lot of the stuff, looking for monitors, getting away from the curved. Yeah, I do like a flat. My buddy has a curved ultra wide, which if the curve isn't too sharp and it's like your main monitor, I could see it. Digital found a preview of the 480 showed Doom. Doom is one of those that is like such an optimized game that is really, that's another one too. Like Doom the Dark Ages, that game looks so good. And also DLSS 4 is on there, and you've got like 200 frames per second and all that crazy stuff. But also the world looks so like high detailed. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, but this will probably be the final thing to talk about because we've been going for about an hour and a half. I know, Dizzy, you mentioned that upscaling you're not as much of a fan of. And that is totally fair. Certain things like upscaling technology has slowly been getting better. Even FSR 4, which was shown off at CES, is a big improvement over FSR 3. There's a progression to the technology, but the biggest thing is I saw Power GPU. Jesse, the guy who runs that, he was out there at CES and he showed Black Myth Wukong turn everything on. Yeah, FSR 4 was a big improvement on when they were playing Ratchet and Clank. But Black Myth Wukong natively rendered, and this is the key, natively rendering every single pixel on that screen. So you're rendering, 4K image. 4K image, how many pixels? 33 million, is that what it was? No, 4K image has 8 million pixels as opposed to like whatever's crazy. I think 8K is the next one. Is 8K the 33 million pixels? Yeah, 8K is the 33 million. That's why. So 4K. But again, take 8.3 million pixels and you render them every single frame. It's not easy to do. So a lot of what they've been doing, like DLSS seems to be the best. PSSR for PlayStation definitely seems to be something to pay attention to. And I think when it comes to the PS6 in a few years, PSSR is going to be a potent thing on that system because you're going to have that technology refined for about 4 years of testing. It's going to be on a new system. AMD is going to help working with them with their Amethyst, I think is what they were working on, something combined. Yeah, Vulkan's a great engine, by the way, Ryken. But the idea of taking all of those 8.3 million pixels and rendering them every time, especially when they're trying to do calculations for ray tracing instead of like baked in lighting, now they're doing the calculation of all the rays. Well, if you're going to count every single ray that's going for every single pixel in every single image, that is where right now the processing of what the cards are capable of, it's not keeping up. Like asking for native ray tracing, they had Black Myth Wukong. And again, every game is going to be optimized a little bit differently. Exactly. It multiplies exponentially. It gets to be a little ridiculous. So when they can instead render, even if it's 1 million pixels versus 8.3 million pixels, that is 1/8 the workload. And then if they can build an image out of that that is damn near indiscernible, especially when you're moving, like a lot of people will do these like pixel comparisons on a very still image. That's the FSR4 thing. Like they're doing side by side. Same image, same thing. But if you're just running around in a game, yeah, you won't notice things as much and you have a much better experience and a pretty damn crispy image. Like an image that's going to be way better than 1440, may not be perfect 4K the whole time, but you're getting a smooth gameplay experience with features you wouldn't have otherwise. Because what ray tracing is starting to do for a lot of the people who haven't played with it on, the way lighting is going to react to everything around you in the world, it just feels better, as the most simple way I could say it. But if, light flickering off of a lantern on a wall in Doom has actually the ground doing its thing, as opposed to just a spot in the game that they're like, there's a lantern up here, so this spot on the ground has a basic glow on the ground. And that's it. Now, granted, there's a distinction between those two of what they've been working on from years and years, but that's like the basic idea of they can actually take the reflection, and then if you walk in front of it, the shadow can be real. And then if you walk in front of a piece of glass, the reflection in the mirror can be as accurate as possible. All of that stuff is possible for like the GPU to even think of, because it's not having to do it at full fidelity all the time. If they can do it at even half, like when you do DLSS at like quality, I think that's like half, or it's pretty close. DLSS quality 4K versus native. 4K DLSS has an internal render resolution of 1440p anyway. So if you're going to do DLSS 4K quality versus like a native 4K of 1440p image, your 4K DLSS image is just going to look better. It really is. So non-native on 4K, yeah. A lot of the time, they're getting so good at these algorithms and everything that they're capable of doing. The visuals that you're going to look at are good. Now, when it comes to taking this all the way back to something I mentioned just like a while ago, when they say the 5070 is equal to the 4090, there is a giant asterisk next to that statement, but they don't tell you that from the front. Now, if you're going to have the 5070, which is a $549 card, versus the 4090, which was like $1,500. No, but biggest thing is they tell you, like if you go look it up, if you go native to native from the 4090 to the 5070, there may not even be that much of a difference in like a 4070 and a 5070. It might be a 20% difference between the 4070. We're not talking a 4090. The 4070 to the 5070, you might have a 20% increase in native. But if they're focusing purely on frame rate, that is the biggest thing about that technology, is frame rate. One thing that DLSS 3.5 has done is frame generation for the 4000 series cards versus, say, like mine. I don't have that extra frame that gets made and rendered in between to smooth everything out and bring that frame rate up. That's why when they had a 5090, and like the guy from Power GPU, when he looked at that image with just native, all the bells and whistles on, the native image was 28 to 29 frames per second. And I know that sounds awful, but the 4090 in that same situation was 20. So if you take almost a 50% increase in native frame rate with every single bell and whistle on that you can find, that is a substantial improvement. Now, is everything going to be linear and 50% and all those things? No, not everything always lines up that way. There's always going to be diminishing returns on a lot of stuff. But if you think of it, the idea that even if it's 40%, give that a better piece of math. If you are going to I don't know if you're going to be able to decide how many frames get generated if you just want to limit it to 1. That's fine. But now, in something that was trying to run 20 frames per second, and then maybe DLSS 3.5 was adding 1 frame in the middle, so it's getting up to 40 frames. If you run at 28, maybe it might hover around 30, depending on what's going on. And then you can add even just 1 frame. Now you're at that 4K 60. Every bell and whistle with 1 frame generated. But then if you have like a, 240 hertz monitor, or even 120, if DLSS 4 can make 2 frames, now you're going to be playing with 3 frames. Now you're getting more frames in there and all of that type of stuff. So it is going to be a smoother image. I don't know how those frames are going to look. You're going to have Digital Foundry do a breakdown on every frame of what it looks like, which ones are real, which ones are not. That's just crazy technology that they've been making to be able to take an image native and now be able to like think ahead and see what's going on and all the machine learning and all of that stuff. It is actually pretty crazy what they're capable of. Monster amount of VRAM this time as well, probably going to help with VR. Yeah, the 32 gig helps me with like streaming and rendering and recording and doing all those things at the same time as well. That's another reason why I'm getting the big one, is there's times I've used most, if not all of my VRAM at 24. So I'm not going back down to 16. I'm at least 24, if not up. That's why the 5090 is the card I'm going with. But it's that type of technology. Some people are like, well, Black Myth Wukong's also horribly, unoptimized. And that may be the case. I don't know for sure. It ran decently well on my computer with some, I think it was DLSS balanced maybe. And I had a 4K 60 image on my 3090. And it was balanced. I didn't have ray tracing on. So again, the more you ask out of the graphics card to... by the way, this end of the podcast got really nerdy, so if you guys don't enjoy this type of stuff, please let me know in comments or wherever you watch or listen to this one, because if you don't want to hear me go down these rabbit holes occasionally, it would be good to know. But I also just sometimes enjoy talking about this stuff, so it's going to happen. Other times you'll find me talking about a game and I'll get lost in that. But yeah, the 5090 is very powerful. I mean, the number of CUDA cores, the number of the memory bandwidth, by the way, going from, I think it was 384-bit to 512. The memory went from 24 gig up to 32 gig. The CUDA cores, I think, a lot of things went up by like a third from the 4090 to the 5090. And then if you take on top of that, they have a improved processor process to actually make it more energy efficient. Even now it's going to be able to pull 575 watts, which is insane. Clocks may be a little bit lower, but the thing is going to be a monster of a card. So we will see. And I'm making a 2-generation jump, so I'm not going 4090 to 5090. 3090 to 5090 is going to be something I'll feel. If it was 4090 to 5090, you'd feel it, but it wouldn't be as much. But the 2-generation, I went 1080 Ti, 3090 to this. So I've usually had a generation in between, and it tends to be reasonable enough that way. And if I can do the GPU this time and wait for Zen 6, which is what I'm waiting for the AMD. So I don't know if they're going to go up to 10,000 or redo a numbering, but the 10950X, the 1070 to the 470 Ti. Yeah, if you made that big of a jump, see, those are the fun ones to hear about though. New CPUs coming along with these cards will be the same time. This is going to be a general leap. Yeah, the CPUs are already out there. The Intel ones aren't that exciting, like Lunar Lake, the 285K and stuff. And then you've got the 9800X 3D for AMD. I'm trying to pass on this generation of CPUs and wait for the 10950X. Give that a year or two so I can kind of space the expenses out. Yeah, so... yeah, the AMD stuff is done. So the 9950X is what would basically be 2 generations into replacing mine. But if I can wait 3 generations on my CPU and kind of separate the upgrades, I'll be a little happier in the wallet. But yeah, if you go from a 1070 to a 4070, 3 generations, yeah, you're going to be feeling 4070 Ti on top of that. You'll go from 1080, 60 frames, being comfortable, all the way up to 1440, 120, butter smooth, new features. Yeah, it's a game changer. PCs aren't cheap, but man, when you make some of those generational leaps, feels really good in what you're playing. The other thing is the monitor, and that's why I do want the monitor. I want a 4K OLED really pretty high refresh rate panel that I can use for a long time to come. And the one that I think I'm going to have coming here soon is DisplayPort 2.1, so I'm future-proofed. So it should be good for a while. Even the mid-range budgets. Oh, I mean, if somebody's looking to build a PC this time around, and in February they buy, say, like a 5070 Ti, and they're trying to stay in a, I say reasonable budget, that's a $750 card. Not cheap. But if you can do that and then get, say, 5070 Ti, maybe 9800X 3D, and you get that like mid-range build, you'll probably be rocking like 4K 60 on something like that, better than mine. So, I mean, no, it's going to be crazy what's going to happen with some of these cards coming. AMD doing their whole 9070 thing, they're going to, I don't know what they're going to price that because they didn't tell anybody, but that thing better be cheap to compete because I think NVIDIA is still going to mop the floor with them. I like AMD processors right now. Their GPUs are not really exciting to me. They would really have to price them competitively to matter for even the mid-range people because the 5070 is going to be an interesting one to fight against, I think. But on the high end, like AMD's not touching them. So yeah, that's why that one's so crazy up there with $2,000. But yeah, in case you guys are ever wondering, if you want to watch the video, if you ever want to be a supporter on anything, subscribe, memberships, YouTube, Patreon, all that fun, it does go to helping my world keep going. But that'll be a discussion for a different day. Yeah, right now AMD is the better processor, just I think in general as well. The 9800X30 is easily the best processor for gaming, I'm pretty sure. Overall average by a good margin. Yeah, the AMD GPU and drivers and stuff, just NVIDIA's kind of winning that battle. But the CPUs for AMD have definitely made a point to where Intel's got to rethink a few things, and Intel's had some struggles, so it's going to be fun. But yeah, I will tell all of you guys that are watching right now, I will be looking for a 5090. I'm going to try and get one however I can. I've got a Micro Center next to me. I may be going to camp out. Who knows? But also, if there's anybody who I know is like a reliable contact, I will also buy it off you if you can buy the thing. So if you're like looking into doing any of that type of stuff, I would like to get one. It's just I hope the scalpers aren't too much of a pain in the butt, but we'll see. You have a Ryzen 7 5700X? See, I've got a 5950X, so we're on the same generation. Yeah, if we can wait for the next Ryzen chip, like CPUs, we'll be in good shape. But I think I've rambled enough about computer hardware. There's a lot of games coming. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the preview for Eternal Strands. Whether you watch this on audio or video or listen to me wherever you're going to find this, I will upload it to the Last Word YouTube channel. That one's separate than here just because this is the gaming content. The podcast doesn't really fit within the algorithm of this channel. But the streams I think are sometimes reasonable to do because they go unlisted afterwards and then I put it other places. But overall, thank you guys for hanging out. The guys will be back occasionally. So if you're looking forward to seeing them, I'll try and give you an announcement when they're going to be around. And, oh, yours is in Dallas. Mine's in Dallas, but I'm in Dallas, so that's a thing too. But yeah, I'm going to go see if it's snowing outside because we actually have a little winter weather here in Texas and we don't get that very often. So might see if the dogs want to go romp in the snow for a hot second. And other than that, you guys have been awesome. And thank you all very much for hanging out today for this one. I'm going to be playing a couple of things. We've got Hyperlight Breaker next week. If I'm playing Path of Exile and I'm just streaming, I might just be streaming over on Twitch and then making content or whatever I can. I made a couple of Path of Exile videos. I don't know if I missed the window. I also know they're working on a patch, so it might be worth checking that one out in a couple days as well. Thank you all, everybody, though. You guys have been a blast. I will upload this in all the usual places. If it's not tonight, I'll upload it tomorrow morning. And thank you guys for being here. 2025 is a big year. Lots to do, lots to cover. And for me, it's been a journey away from Destiny. And I thank you guys for being here for the shift in that journey. And again, the guys will be around occasionally. You know where to listen to Iron Lord's podcast, Defining Duke, Bitcast, all that stuff's always a good time to listen to those guys, and they'll be here occasionally, and I'll always keep up with them. So thank you all. Hit me up on Twitter if you ever have questions. Find me on Blue Sky. Occasionally I'm on there. Trying to use that a little bit more. But thank you, everybody. I'm going to try and get back into streaming, covering what I can. If I'm playing something under embargo, it's hard to stream. So always check out the YouTube channel as well. I've been watching chat over here, so it looked like the podcast had me talking to my left monitor. That's why. But thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and enjoy your weekend.